You know what? If we're hitting it now, if we're going to hit the deep stuff, why waste it for the pre-show?
Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, episode 32 of The Tom Kelly Show. Today's episode of The Tom Kelly Show is sponsored by me, Tom Kelly. I am available for your family Christmas party. I am available to do stand-up for your corporate Christmas party. And guess what? At least in Pennsylvania and New York, the restaurants are gone. We're on another wave of a lockdown. And honestly, this is not a product I wanted to offer you, but people started asking, and then the governors took my side in this. Email me, TomKellyShow@me.com for that information. Actually, even better. Just email me, TomKellyShow@me.com, and tell me what you think of the show. You actually matter to me. Our base of listeners is small and interactive. I'm at that level of fame, people, where you can get me. Actually, you can get me with the trolls. A great one. A great troll got me on one of my YouTube videos. Okay. And
I can't wait to hear this.
Yes. Yes. And by the way, joining me as always, Chris Abate will plug his stuff later.
Yeah,
anyway,
don't worry about my stuff. It's all about this is yours, Tom.
I need to sidekick your show, and then that'll make me feel less guilty about this.
Hey, come aboard.
So now, here is where you guys have access to me. I had a video about Nancy Pelosi, and the first 3 or 4 lines was, sometimes I go to a YouTube channel and I look and I say, why doesn't this person have more followers than he already does? And then I had to click the read more button. That is not the case with Tom Kelly. And the part that was great was I had to click the read more button. Mm-hmm. So listen, while we're clicking buttons, we're going to have a whole new group of subscribers and listeners today for our guest, Sam Morril. Hit the subscribe button if you're feeling crazy. Apple Podcasts, 5 stars, blah, blah, blah. Also, later at the end of the show, Christian Bladt is here from the Bladtcast. You know him from his work with Dennis Miller, his work on AfterBuzz TV, and all of those other great shows. But I'm going to talk about the greatest guest of all was COVID-19 for our run in 32 shows.
Yes.
It's funny. On episode 31, I didn't want to milk COVID-19. But right now, our highest rated shows are me yelling at Chris Abate, not letting him talk, and how I was mad at getting sick. And I am going to say this is day, I believe, 22 of COVID-19. I don't want to speak about it much because I don't want to bring it in my life, but I also want to acknowledge COVID after fog is a real thing.
Ooh, that's an interesting part.
Have you heard about that side effect? You hear about listen, and we'll hit this in a minute. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. I had a friend who got this, and we'll talk about him and pay tribute to him in a minute. I have a friend who got it and died of it. Actually, you know what? I will pay tribute to him for a second. Kenny Ortega. Kenny Ortega was a great comedian. I don't know if he was ever meant to be famous. He did some TV things. Like, let's put it like this. And honestly, I say that about myself now. He's not a guy like our guest Sam Morril, who, is pretty big on YouTube, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Kenny Ortega was great in a club and better than me at a club and just magical in a club. Kenny and I worked the Times Square rooms, which is a different type of room. It was all tourists. You never knew who spoke English. You never who did this. You never know. Half the people there were just there for free shelter from the rain. Like nobody was there. My friend Francisco, who works there a lot, Francisco Alderano, always has a joke. Nobody goes to that club on purpose. And Kenny Ortega, God rest his soul, yeah, the man could surf a crowd. He was 300 pounds, could surf a damn crowd. He's one of 3 people in my life who I have ever yelled at about their health. Like where I just blatantly said, dude, what's up with your health? He was the poster child for high risk group. I haven't talked to him since the summer. I booked him for a gig and it got canceled. And somewhere along the line, while I was sick, he was sick. I'm alive. He's not.
Oh, that's awful, Tom.
You know, it's not that awful because I'm the one who's alive. So, and Kenny could laugh at that. Mm-hmm. But I say this for real. People, you don't want this. I'm at 90%, and I've been stuck at 90% for about a week. My breathing is almost there. And then there was one day where I felt 100%, and the next day I went cross town in the city 3 different times, and I crashed. There are days where I get dumber. I really do. Like you just feel tired and you just have trouble thinking, and you're tired, but you can't nap. Before COVID, I could nap and I'd be better. And I can't wait to get to that. But just that's all I want to say. I don't want to overmilk this. But I would not wish my experience with COVID-19 on my worst enemy, and I am a vindictive fuck. Like, do you remember Jason, the guy at Quinnipiac I didn't like?
Oh, yes.
I would not.
Wow, there's a name from the past.
Yeah, and I would not wish COVID-19 on him.
No. Now, Tom, there is one benefit to you getting COVID outside of podcast and
what's that?
Topics and whatnot. I get your vaccine.
What do you mean?
You don't need a vaccine.
Oh, no. And listen, stop that, Chris. Chris, save that stupid shit for Alex Jones.
Okay.
Summing it up, 9 people, 1 party, every single person got COVID-19. Be smart, be responsible. You don't want it, man. And again, I didn't even have it that bad. Comparatively.
Right.
You know? And that's it. And you know what? That's it, people. Just don't do it. Don't do it. I would not wish COVID on my worst enemy. And I have a bunch. Like, I really thought about it. Like, I had a year with a bunch of people I don't particularly care for and would love to not see again. And I wouldn't wish it on them.
Yeah.
I'm mean at times. I'm mean. I don't know. I just, right? Thank you. That's me. That's it.
Preach that word.
Can I get an amen? There you go. We've got Sam Morril. Then we have real people in our jury segment where I just ask regular people, what can I learn from you? And then Christian Bladt of the Bladtcast, hilarious old friend. We share a couple of old stories. And then he actually has a few morsels of wisdom that apply to the whole universe, whether you're a comedian, podcaster, broadcaster, or not. Sam Morril. Actually, I always screw up. Morrill or Morrell? You go Morrell, right?
Yeah. My dad just said Morrell, and I was like, all right, it doesn't really make sense. Now, for the rest of my life, I have to just be that guy. Like, actually. But that's what he wanted, so all right.
So, Tom, you've opened for Sam. That's what
I have.
We've been on, like, showcases.
Showcases,
okay.
yeah.
I gotcha.
So opened is a strong word. Open means like it's the 3 of us on the road having a great time. But yeah, showcases and everybody gets excited. Like he's a headliner. The man's on the brink of being a star. And along those lines, Chris.
I mean,
well, what is that?
It's a long road. It's a long road.
You know what it is? Here's how I describe Sam. When Sam's on the show, the booker's like, Sam's on the show. Like, it's just one of those.
Oh, really? I don't feel that enthusiasm when I get there, so that's hilarious. That's the word when I'm not around. That's
good to know. That's good to know. And just because I like to get the plugs out of the way at the top, Sam probably had a career that got crushed this year. I'm taking a guess at that.
Yeah, it wasn't a good year in the fact that I put out a special that I think would have really helped my numbers on the road. And then, the road goes away. And then I was like, fuck it, I'm putting out. Some people were like, you're an idiot for putting out another one already because you could tour. Like, I didn't get to tour with this new special. Now I don't get to tour with this other new special.
So I haven't seen just to get the plug out of the way, the other new special I've seen pieces of, whatever. Yeah. But this new special is the 2020 special of the year. It's Sam performing on roofs, but it's more than just stand-up. It documents the rooftop experience. And Chris, I haven't been a rooftop comedian. I've been a parking lot comedian this summer.
Oh, really?
I haven't done a single roof.
For me were like, it kind of just felt like aesthetically very cool. Like I'd be like, because my last 2 Comedy Central specials, they were we had the New York City skyline as the backdrop, just indoors. And now I'm like, oh, I didn't anticipate the actual New York City skyline, but that's where we're at, So, the roofs got cool. And then I just started cutting around to different roofs to mask how rusty and shitty I am at comedy right now. Because, when you do a special, normally you're running that into the ground. You're so sick of the material. I was still kind of figuring out these jokes when I did this special.
Yeah, I got a sense of that, but that's what I liked about it. Like it was more than just, hey, look at me, I'm a polished comic. It was, I'm making the best of a shitty year. How many days did you shoot it over, Sam?
We probably shot like 10 roofs, but we used probably 4 or 5. The problem was, it's like indoors, there are issues. So when you're on a roof, there was a problem every night. It was such a stressful experience for me. And I'm an anxious person with this. So we'd get there and they'd be like, the outlets don't work. And I'd be like, well, it's 8 p.m. and it's dark. We need lights. Like we can't just shoot it in the dark. So there would be something like that every night where they'd be like, oh, we don't, the mic and amp, it's going to cut it. We had a whole montage of like the amp and mic not working because that was a thing where I'd be like, dude, I'm rusty. I'm having a hard enough time remembering jokes. And I got to like figure out how to work. I said it's kind of like working a clitoris because you got to like be very, a lot of finesse. You got to make sure it works. But, it was weirdly like the lowest production thing, but also in some ways, we had a drone. I mean, we had like overhead views of the city. I mean, it's gorgeous. I got very lucky that Matt Salacuse, my director, and Dominic Mole shows up with a fucking drone.
Well, I was going to say, like, if you hate comedy, you'll love the drone footage.
Well, you know what it was is one night when Matt's a native New Yorker like I am, so we're just talking about the Woody Allen movie Manhattan, and we're both talking about how much he loved the opening. And I was like, yeah, the opening is great. Me personally, I like that he dated a high school girl, but if you're into the opening, that's cool. No, but we talked about the opening and I was just like, man, that's one of my favorite openings to any movie. Is just like, there's just a love and passion for New York. So at one point he just said it was his city. And I go, and it always would be. And I was like, oh, we're on the same wavelength. We're like quoting Manhattan. So then that became very much like a part of the, but then also I love like the Beastie Boys and I kind of like that, like that. I mean, we tried to get Shake Your Rump as the song that we just played throughout it, but the Beastie, like I tried literally everything to get in contact with the Beastie Boys. Like I have a pretty high powered agent. I'm like, well, he'll get in contact with this guy. And he's like, I haven't heard anything. Then I'm like, well, Matt knows the woman who wrote the Beastie Boys book. They went to, and Matt and Mike D went to like the same high school. That's a good intro, So we're using everything and nothing works. I was like, I wasn't meant to be. So
yeah, and you know what? Why pay them royalties? Why pay them a nickel per view or whatever?
Well, that wasn't the plan. The plan was, hey, how about giving a New York project with no budget something for free? Because they're like a real artists, the Beastie Boys. So they won't. I think it was in MCA's. Like he wrote before he died, I think he said something along the lines of like, you can't use any of our music in a commercial. And they're very like, but then I was like, if it's something they believe in, maybe they'd be. And this is such a like gritty
and it is
New
like
York project, bare bones.
And that's a right way. Did you see the Beastie Boys documentary on Apple TV?
I didn't. I saw it live though. I saw the live show. I think it was kind of in the. Yeah, I think it was in the fetal stages when I saw it. It was a little rusty.
No, because it's funny you say that because your special, the rooftop special, Sam Morril on the Roof, now available on YouTube, 300,000 views. By the way,
very cool,
and only a week, right?
Well, it came out like around Thanksgiving, so it's been like probably 12 days or something.
Dude, I can't get 312 days sometimes.
Well, I'm glad I'm doing your podcast. Right, so.
This will get you up to 300,005 pretty quick.
A lot of comics were pushing it. I was grateful for the support of comics. It's crazy, but it's always the comics who help out. It's the fucking industry has been worthless, but comics really are where it's at always.
Yeah, see, and it's funny. I have trouble playing with other comics. I just I love small groups, and then there are moments where I feel like I'm not man enough and don't know enough sports to hang out at the bar.
I feel bad because I feel like I'm the guy talking basketball. So now I'm like, oh, I'll change the top. What should we talk about instead of sports?
And there's just moments where I wish I knew more about the Knicks. But you got a sports for all the things you're doing, and you got a sports podcast?
Well, yeah, I do. My friend Stavros and we used to have a show on MSG, and it was one of those shows where it's like, I grew up in New York City, so to have a show on MSG is kind of insane. But then they literally poo-poo like every fun idea. So it's like this is what happens a lot. They bring you in because they're like, this guy is like, he's gonna give us a bite, and then they're like, oh, you can't do anything that you thought of. It's got to be like, so that was a bummer for us. But so we ended up saying, well, what if we did a show like that, but just all the jokes we wanted. So that's kind of what Pod Don't Lie is. I do that with Stavros, who's so funny, and then I'm trying this thing with Mark Normand, who's one of my good friends. Normand. Well, Mark and I we put one out last night. We're like, we're just going to read offbeat sections of the newspaper and then just try to riff jokes. And and I think it's like a fun exercise. We put one out last night. I think people like it. And Mark he's just fun. The point of these it's like I would talk basketball with Stavros if we didn't have a podcast. I would talk jokes with Mark or just whatever with Mark if we didn't have a podcast. So, I think the point, do stuff that's fun because it might fail. So you may as well have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And along those lines, with the roof, is that, like, it's, Chris, have you seen it yet? I know I gave this to you.
I watched the beginning of it. Yeah.
Okay, so awesome. Chris,
that's a hell of a ringing endorsement right there, Chris. Thank you.
Chris has had 15 minutes notice on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. But dude, your cameraman almost falls off the roof in one of the shots.
It made me crazy. Like as I said, there's enough distractions when you're outdoors and there's horns honking and there's a roof and and then I'm looking at the edge and he's like this kind of tough cameraman. He's like, I don't give a shit. I'll fuck. And I'm like, dude, you got at least get on a knee. So I'm not worried about you tipping over. So I'd be mid set freaking out and I'd get mad at him. I'd be like, you got to not do that. That's fucking like, and also I think one of the lines in the special is like, if you die as I'm doing a joke about jacking off, do you know how fucking guilty I'm gonna feel? Do you know, like I'm at your funeral, like he died the way he lived, listening to me. Like it's one of the things where I was so nervous for him. So yeah, Matt and I he's like a good buddy of mine, but he would drive me nuts with that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the things we're doing with this podcast is think my fan base is non-stand-up comics, the people listening to this. Half of my fan base is people who saw me at daytime shows. And what I'm trying to connect them with are real people who are creative, who took a shitty year and turned it into something good. Like you just said, you're not making that much money off this special. Why release it? Why shoot it?
Well, it's all an investment for the future. I think you gotta put stuff out because when I was on the road, even like I'd say beginning of the year, I started to sell more tickets than I'd ever sold. So I thought, I really didn't get to capitalize that much on the new special I put out. So then let me just keep putting shit out. So when I can tour again, the money starts getting better and better and the people start coming out more and more. I mean, at the end of the day, I think most comics are doing this to have people see their jokes. That's the weird thing is like the special, I did a special, an hour special for Comedy Central and the money was good, but no one watched it because until I started clipping it up illegally because the model is so broken, that's part of the problem is the model is like, unless you're on one of those huge streamers like Netflix, like, do you know how out of place in time I felt being like, watch my special at 11 p.m. tonight? Everyone's like, what? Who the fuck? We don't do that anymore. So then it's on and then they're like, now it's behind a paywall or it's you have to watch 15 commercials throughout the special. And I'm like, that's not how people, like, they wouldn't do that for Chappelle. You think they're going to do that for me?
Actually, I was impressed, dude. You didn't put any commercials in.
Because I know people's attention span is shit.
Yeah.
Maybe when I reach a certain point, I'll put ads in, but like, you got to know what people, I mean, I have a shit attention span. So you have to think like, what would you watch? Like, you're scrolling through Amazon or something, and I'm like, well, I could watch Columbo with ads, or I could just watch, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like something without ads. And you're like, I'm gonna go. I love Columbo. I'm gonna go with the one without ads.
You're the son my mother always wanted with a Columbo reference in the middle of a podcast.
Dude, legend.
Actually, one thing I loved about this special that I don't think any other comic has done is you're the only comic I know who has actually put clips in of people who hate his fucking shit. Like there was the girl who got offended at one of your at the bodega joke.
Well, that wasn't even at a show. I wasn't even doing a bit. I was telling an anecdote to my cameraman Matt. Like we just chat sometimes, and he'd keep the camera rolling. And he would, his energy and enthusiasm would like get me going to talk because we're friends. It's so easy to just be yourself. So I would tell a story, or I'd be silly sometimes, and yeah, a woman on the street just like, you're horrible at comedy. And I'm just like, what? So I told her, I was like, well, you got to keep that in. She even said, I think, like, you can't use this. And I was like, just blur her face. No one's going to know. You know what I mean? Like because she was like, she saw a camera and she completely started shit with me. And I'm always like, when I was young, I was a little more aggressive with hecklers. I'm just like, I don't give a shit at this point. I'm very laid back with hecklers now because I just kind of I don't care. I'm not as angry as I was. And I think the other part of it is like, you got to keep in those ugly moments because this is an ugly year. You can't just show like most specials are like in this theater and you're like, oh my God, everything's beautiful and the curtains and the seating is perfect and the lighting. And then I was like, I'm on the roofs. What am I going to act like I'm fucking on fire here? Like there's going to be some ugliness we got to throw in because this year is a mess. So let's show.
That's what makes the roofs really cutting edge in a way, because it's for this year it fits the mold.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like my agent was telling me, he's like, there was bound to be a rooftop special sooner or later, and I was like, don't know if I agree with you. I think there needed to be a pandemic. He's like, but he's a New Yorker like me, so my agent's like he's like from the Bronx, and he was like, he's so into like the views and stuff. So so he was so into it. He was so into the idea of it. So New Yorkers, I feel like, if I get like Colin Quinn's blessing, then I'm like, the special's a success, because it's such a New York special.
It's like visually stunning. And and what's cool about it too is you get Manhattan on the skyline, but you get to feel what it's like to live in you shot in Queens and Brooklyn, right?
I didn't go to Queens, actually. I mean, it wasn't like I was trying to get around everywhere, but I didn't get any messages for like Astoria or Flushing. I would have totally gone, but the messages we got, like, we did Bushwick. We did a couple in Williamsburg. We did Hell's Kitchen, West Village, Lower East Side. Chinatown was one of the beautiful views. Bushwick was an incredible view because that's one where we had there was this giant second level to it, and people were just dangling off the second level. And it was a bummer that was one of the worst shows because it's all like Bushwick musicians who are all like, no, we get what you're doing. I'm like, artsy crowds are the worst fucking crowds because they like want to like experience the joke rather than laugh at it. Like you need people who are just like reactive. You don't want people who are just like, huh, yeah, I see what you did with it.
And that gets me to the other thing I admire about you is you're laid back. That's the word I've been looking for the whole damn show. How do you deal with the cancel culture? Like, you're right, you did On the Street.
I don't think the jokes are malicious. You have to just accept that the jokes, you either trust me with the premise or you don't. And if you don't, then I don't really feel like you were going to be a fan to begin with. So, this is kind of what I've been doing for a while.
Yeah, like your baby verse phone bit. Like, I could see that being offensive nowadays.
No.
Yeah?
Shitting on babies is fine, I think. Babies are, you know what I mean? Like, it's hilarious that the people who would get offended by that joke would be like writing and be like, oh, how do you write in? On your phone, neglecting your shitty baby. Exactly. I mean, they're jokes. I like babies. Of course I like babies. I like kids. I mean, my friend just had a baby and I couldn't wait to hold her. I thought it was like exciting. But at the same time, you can't deny that phones have more of a hold on your life. So I think that premise was just, jokes work sometimes because you need hyperbole. You need to really hammer home a point. And I mean, what do you like? What are you going to tell a joke like? Well, this is sort of like this, and you're just like, no, you got to commit. Why are they going to listen if you don't believe in it?
If I were bringing this show home, and I were bringing it home to non-comics and comics or whoever might be listening, our slogan this year has been, how do you turn 2020 lemons into 2021 lemonade? Do you have any advice for people who have had a shitty year and are trying to turn next year into a great one?
Jeez.
Is that too heavy or too deep?
Move to Canada. They seem to be handling this pretty well. I don't know. I don't know, man. I think...
Well, I mean, I'll tell you the lesson I got out of it just from watching you, which is you just fucking kept moving. You're right. You lost a shitload of money. You've lost 1 year of the best years of your performing life, and you kept moving.
For me, it's not really about like, it wasn't like as calculated as like, let's turn this year around. It was more like, I need a distraction. I need to be distracted. And this was a way, like, I love comedy. I love doing stand-up. This was a way for me to have something to do every night. I need a distraction. I miss... Truthfully, I miss really internalizing all my problems and distracting them with stand-up. So that's really what I miss, is like I've had to confront some demons this year, and that was a real problem. So I guess my advice is just, if you don't have a hobby, start drinking heavily.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Sam Morril on the Roof, his new special on YouTube. Don't just listen to the special. Watch the special. Hit subscribe on all his stuff. And what are you, Sam Morril on the YouTube? Is it Instagram? Like everywhere.
I'm just my name on everything. And then and I got another special on there called I Got This. If you want to see another one, both this year. I Got This is definitely more polished, but Up on the Roof is visually pretty great, and it's like a more guerrilla style special.
Sam, thank you so much for doing this. It is my favorite segment of the Tom Kelly Show podcast. It's the jury, where I talk to random, regular people about a topic. And the topic is, and it's a good one for 2020 and 2021 and our self-improvement, what can I learn about you? What can I learn from you is a great topic. So right now, she's had a great shimmy. DC, what can I learn from you? DC.
Hi, I'm Dr. Carolyn Edwards. I'm a professor, and I love the segment. What you can learn from me is you do not need anybody to co-sign or approve your dream. Just do it.
I love it, Doctor. I love it, Doctor. Who else? What can I learn from you as a person? ML, unmute yourself. ML, what can I learn from you?
It's something that I learned 30 years ago on my first job. My boss had told me, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, you're left. So that has followed me. It's been great input. It's amazing.
I love it. My friend, a priest who was a mentor of mine in college, used to say, Tom, if you're not early, you're late. That's such good wisdom. Who else? NW, what can I learn from you?
Oh, hi. I think I am just a very cheerful person, and I think just being positive a lot of the times can get you through a lot of dark times.
LD, what can I learn from you?
Hey, Tom. Well, what you can learn from me is that a smile goes a long way.
You know what? It really does, especially with you, Lilia, especially with you. What can I learn from you, friend?
Hi, Trish Harleston, and I celebrated my 60th birthday this year. So what you can learn from me is it's never too late to be all that you were created to be.
No, isn't it funny? The older you get, the more you say that. And you know what? Who wants to be my big closer? My big closer for the jury today. SF, you've raised your hand. Go quick. We got to go quick. We're short on time.
Earlier this year, I was homeless living in a motel, and I got above that. And now I bought a home recently. You can get above anything if you work hard and believe.
Oh my God, why do I have to be so short on time for such a good one? On the Tom Kelly Show right now is one of my, oldest friends on earth. I'm actually passing the baton from Chris Abate, who knew me in college, to Christian Bladt, who knew me literally in my first days after leaving college. We interned together at Conan O'Brien. We were NBC pages together. We supported each other during our earliest days in comedy together. And frankly, he was a big part of my early successes and a witness to my earliest failures. And he is the star of a great podcast for people exactly in my demo. If you are in your 40s, if you like nerd culture, if you like comedy, if you have guy friends, this is the man for you. He launched it with Dennis Miller and has kept it going on his own. The star of the Bladtcast is here, Christian Bladt, ladies and gentlemen. And
that's right. Yes, Christian Bladtcast, as it were. And I am very excited to be here with Tom.
I actually probably created a podcast just so I could have Christian on to reciprocate for all the kindness you've shown me.
Yes.
Half of my podcast, and I know you haven't had a chance to listen yet, right? You haven't listened yet.
Well, no, I checked out the one because I wanted to hear how stupid you were to get COVID. So I was really interested in that story. Because everybody says, like, whatever you do, don't go inside, just stay outside. Don't get together with friends. You're not allowed to have friends. And Tom's like, I'm going to go hang out with friends.
I only did it for an hour.
Yeah.
You're right. And that's my highest rated episode to date. It's even outrated The Bachelorette. I've ranted about that, this whole thing in the beginning. What are your highest rated episodes of the Bladtcast?
Oh, that's easy. Episodes that have Dennis Miller in them. Because people will know to seek those out. I'll usually pin them where they're easily found, but then they'll also show up on Google searches and things. So I don't know, I guess it's like 3 months ago now, we did our 400th episode, and Dennis was kind enough to join me on that. And so that's that's like triple the listenership of the episodes that were the couple weeks before, a couple weeks after it. So yeah, I think that tends to be what it is. But, people will seek out, when back in the old days when movies came out, we would try and devote an entire episode to a movie, whether it be a Marvel movie, a Star Wars movie, or Star Trek movie, and you were on some of those. So those will do pretty well because we try to get them up pretty quickly. Okay. So but really, if you have somebody like Dennis Miller in there, and other guests, some musicians, their fan base will flock to the show.
Christian arguably and our friend Tim Sicardo are probably two of the guys who said, Tom, you should start doing stand-up. You got nothing else going on in your life.
Those exact words, by the way. I know that. I'm certain that that's what I said.
We were both invited to be in an NBC Page alumni talent show hosted by Al Roker, the most gracious man in network television. And the short story is we had a huge rehearsal show, and then they were going to keep the audience empty for talent executives to watch us on the actual show.
Correct.
And none of those executives came. 10 people came, and whoever was in the crowd walked out, but Al Roker stayed.
Yes. And, it shows that Al Roker has a heart of gold. But also it was incredibly entertaining that, once he took stock of the tone of the evening and the attendance, he sat in the front row and heckled Tom Kelly. So honestly, what could be better than that? Getting heckled by Al Roker. Okay.
And that's the funny part. And I thought that was the turning point in the show where everybody was tanking. And finally I gave up on my act and just went into crowd work, and without getting too into it, the line was, and I just acknowledged I was tanking in front of Roker, who then called back on a joke about my father and said, "What did he say, Jack?" And then I just used my father's voice and said, in front of the man, and said, "You better not fuck with Roker, Jack."
Yeah, and I think that for me, when you can sort of dig deep for obscure, local or minor celebrities, when you basically said something along the lines of, Mark McEwen would have been nicer, who is a similarly built weatherman, I believe, on the CBS. Yeah. It wasn't even called The Early Show at that point, CBS This Morning. And I think that probably was the biggest laugh he got out of the night.
It was the only laugh I got in my set. And then maybe I got a few little ones after. And it's what I learned about me as a stand-up was I do my best work once I'm tanking. But
right. Well,
but this is a long roundabout, and I'll cut it down.
Sure.
But it's a roundabout way of me saying you that night did a Weekend Update bit, and you had always admired Dennis Miller and Norm Macdonald, and you wound up building a nice career around Dennis Miller.
Yeah, I did. It's one of those things that I try to explain to people is, when you're getting started in this business that Tom and I call show, other people call it entertainment, but we call it show. I a lot of times it's like you should really manage what your goals are, So I was in like middle school and high school. I was like, oh, you know what? I'd like to be Dennis Miller. I would like to do Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live. I think I would be good at that. And suddenly, obviously, there's a reason why I've been on a non-visual medium so much. It's just right here between these eyes. But you get the opportunity to write for Dennis Miller. You're like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. And that really, he took a liking to me because on his old HBO show, this was on his old CNBC show, they would write these terrible bits and I would never say no. Because I'm like, I'm going to get to be on TV. I didn't get paid for them, but I honestly didn't care because I was on TV that night. And that's the level of, fame that I think I ever wanted, was to be able to call my mom and be like, yeah, you should watch. You'll see me on TV tonight. And I was like, great. I don't know who else was watching that show apart from my mom.
And me. I was, because there's nothing better than seeing your friend on CNBC with Dennis Miller playing J. Fred Muggs the monkey. And to see your buddy who has gone to a good college, has a degree, and he's there in a monkey costume, jumping up and down on Dennis Miller's desk.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly that's a bit that some people might have said no to, but I understood, like, well, no, this is where you kind of make your bones, as it were, as they would say in the family, So I think that you get those opportunities, and I stood out more. I think, I'm not patting myself on the back. I think I was a good joke writer. I got a lot of jokes on that show, but the fact that I would be in these bits, and I was very committed to, the fact that I was in these costumes, but not a particularly good actor, but I owned it in a way. So he noticed it. And, I ended up being his assistant, and I worked for him for, I've worked for him for the better part of 16 years. And we literally just earlier this week finished his latest podcast, Dennis Miller Option. And, we'll see what the future holds, but it's not the first time that I've stopped working with him.
Well, what I love about your career, and I think, again, and part of this podcast is to give people hope, is you and Dennis have probably broken up and had your last show together at least 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, but this was the only time we knew we were doing the last show and we got to plan it. The CNBC show got canceled, and we found out by a mass email announcing the new primetime schedule on CNBC. I think Donnie Deutsch got a more plum spot. They had already dispatched the John McEnroe show that our friend Jack Helmuth worked on. So we have this weird, this weird CNBC primetime connection, Jack and I. And the radio show ended in a way where I was driving home on a Thursday afternoon and got a call from the big boss who said, so you did your last show today. And then they aired reruns for about a month. But, in radio, that I don't even hold the company against that, because in radio, it's a pretty steadfast belief that you don't get to do a last show. Sometimes they worry about what you're going to say, but also they think that people are so stupid that you listen on Friday and you have no reason to think that show won't be back on Monday. So you'll tune in and everything will be the same, So, and honestly, in music-based radio, I think that works. I think if I turned on Z100 in New York today, I would expect to hear Scott Shannon, and I'd probably be surprised that he hasn't been there in 30 years.
Yeah. And then you would find out, and then you'd flip over to 101.11 to listen to Cousin Brucey, and you'd feel better about that.
Hey, cousins.
What are some great lessons, whether it be through your own career as a podcaster or working with Dennis, that you can share with me, a new podcaster?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the interesting thing is because, you're a new podcaster, but I didn't know what a podcast was until you did your first podcast. I didn't even understand what it was. I would download that show onto CDs and play them in the car because I didn't understand any other way to do it, And by the way, speaking of which, I know that this is very inside, but I think you have a live read for Latzos into People right now. I think you might want to get to that.
We used to do a fake commercial every day for a law firm in Astoria, Queens, until they found us and offered to pay. And the guy did. God, I forget his first name, but it was the DePipo of the guy. It was
the DePipo
Latzos
is what always
and
stood out for me. Yeah,
and their website was sliptripfall.com.
In answer to your real question, I think that radio and podcasting, there's some things that are similar, and it's a much more personal medium than television. And a lot of it, because look, there's a lot of ways to consume podcasts, but for the most part, people listen on their phone and you're literally inside their ears. So while you're walking around, they're coming with you, in a TV show. Yes, you can watch it that way, especially if you live in a big city where you might commute, but it's a lot easier to take a podcast around with you and, literally everywhere you go. So the connection is so much stronger. Now, you want to be able to build that into a Joe Rogan empire, but not everybody can do that. But I think that, Dennis always felt like he has a very loyal, dedicated fan base, but it's usually like the mean lines of about like half the people like him, half the people don't like him. And it's hard to grow when you're not somebody like the perfect example is Rush Limbaugh. His fans are literally called ditto heads because what he thinks, I don't know that they even still call them that, but that's what they went by. And because it's like, well, what Rush believes is what I believe. And you subscribe to a belief set and you're very passionate, and the radio people, they call that the P1s because you hit the program button and you always make sure you listen to that show. And when you're doing something like what say Dennis does, which is a little bit more eclectic, the beliefs are not necessarily all on one side. In fact, they're certainly not. And it's a little harder to grow because you're like, some people are like, oh, I like this thing about him, but not that thing about him. You're going to turn people off. And that is something that, look, I've done 412 podcasts of the Bladtcast. I've done tons of other shows too. And I don't know that I've really figured it out yet. If I look and I'm like, oh, that episode had 300 people listen. Some people would see that and be like, oh my God, I should just give it up. I'm like, I can't believe that 300 people wanted to hear what I had to say,
and it's funny. I'm going through my numbers have actually been pretty good, but I think it's all because people wanted to see how stupid I was with COVID. The numbers shot up.
Yeah, because I think that's also like friends of yours. Like I checked that one out because I was like, I want to listen to that and then text you because it was like, I didn't want to text you and be like, hey, how are you doing? And then the answer is like, well, listen to my podcast.
Well, yeah. And it's funny. Like I just literally got a text message along those lines from my friend John McCann's Aunt Pat. And she said, Tom, how are you feeling? And the advice you just gave about making it personal is how I'm approaching the Tom Kelly Show. At this point, I'm going to make it a support group. At this point, I got a small group of people, and you, I think joking with you inspired a segment that I used to do on this show again, that I'm doing here at the end of every show, the Magic Mirror. Do you remember the Magic Mirror?
I don't know if I remember the Magic Mirror.
It was the end. You and I have joked about it before. It's the end of Romper Room. Which was a show in New Jersey, and I think it was nationally syndicated in different things.
Well, no, actually, just because we're both TV nerds, there were a lot of regional romper rooms. So it was sort of like, it was more like a franchise. So like there was a romper room in Pittsburgh, there was a romper room in New Jersey, there was a romper room in Cleveland, and they're all different shows. So we had like Miss Molly, but you'll talk to somebody that grew up in another part of the country. This is how I know this. They have Miss somebody else. And you're like, oh, I had no idea.
And it was, I vaguely remember it because I think it got canceled when I was 3 or 4. It was a kid's show where they would roll in cartoons.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of, a very similar business model to Captain Kangaroo, which Bob Keesh and I was a big fan of,
So, and I think I'm going to end the show with you with the Magic Mirror. And the Magic Mirror was Miss Molly in New York was surrounded with all these silly kids who would watch the cartoons with her. And she had a mirror she would hold up to her face, but it wasn't even a mirror because it didn't have glass in it, so she could see the camera. It was really a wand. And she would just say the names of kids, thinking that the viewer at home was connecting. So my magic mirror moment is I see Susie Short, I see Sarah Driver, I see Dan Brasem, I see Shelby, I see Jimmy Dips, who offered to be my emergency contact, even though he lives down in Florida. I see Adam Glynn, who thinks Carla Marie is sleeping with Anthony from last week's show. And most importantly, I see you. I see all my listeners. Listen, at this point, the more you interact with the Tom Kelly Show empire, the more I'll keep doing this. I'm Tom Kelly Show on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. If you get a chance, go to the Apple Store. Give us a 5-star review and write a little paragraph. I don't know if that matters. I just did one for you, Christian, and the Bladtcast.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, and do one for Christian. You know what? Why not make a success pod out of this? Support me, support the people who support me, and let us know how we can support you. At this point, I will trade for favors. And in honor of Christian Bladt, who listened to my old podcast, good night, Astoria.
Can I work in some, you can edit back in plugs of where people can find me and all that?
God, yeah, we'll have to get all that. Actually, let's do, you know what? Let's not even edit this. Let's do it now. Throw it in.
Yeah, no, thank you. For everybody that stuck around to hear my plugs, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And as Tom mentioned, I do have my own podcast called The Bladtcast, Bladtcast. You go to Bladtcast.com. It's sort of a one-stop shop for everything. But there is a Bladtcast YouTube channel now, and you'll see shows I'm about to do. After this, I'm going to do back-to-back shows. I'm going to do a show talking about Marvel movie news. I'm going to do a show talking about Star Trek Discovery. We have a Mandalorian show. We have a political show. So we've got a little bit of everything over there on YouTube. Bladtcast for everything. Bladtcast.com.
And since I've screwed it up, you do the Good Night Astoria.
Good night, Astoria.
That's